You're listening to the Straight Crooked podcast, and we're together today.
Together. How fun.
Yay!
And new and different.
And new and different. I don't think we've recorded an episode together since we had the lighting and all the beautiful effects and everything.
And the stressful editing and
yeah.
the bad makeup and the shadows.
So we're just doing what 2008 era YouTube.
Yeah, like
filming.
a vlog kind of,
Yeah,
right? We're vlogging our podcast today.
All right, cool. We're just gonna wing it.
And we have, should I get into it? We have a very special episode. Normally, we plan out topics and we have lots of things to talk about. We have one big topic to talk about today. And it's something she's got me invested in. And now we're just all in. We can't stop thinking about it, living it, I guess.
Even though it's been a year now, almost.
Yep. And
still into it.
Yeah. Do you want to tell everyone what our topic of the day is?
So we are going to be talking about Alec Murdaugh and the Murdaugh saga.
Not to be confused with Twilight.
Saga is that is not the only thing that saga is used for, okay?
For me it is.
Ew. Anyway, so I call it a saga because I don't just want to focus on the murders. I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about.
And if you don't, what kind of rock are you living under?
Yeah.
But to be fair, I had no idea it was happening when it was happening until you told me. And I wish I would have known sooner. So, I don't know. People might not know.
I feel like you would have been bound to find out about it, though.
It might have been one of those things that popped up on the internet in like passing.
Yeah.
But I might have just like glanced and been like, oh, some crime is going on, and then just completely scrolled through. Yeah. But for those of you who haven't heard, we are going to kind of briefly take you through the entire timeline of events up to present day. So you really don't have to go do any research beforehand.
Yeah, if you don't know about this case already, but we're going to try to keep it brief enough as to those who do know about this case, it doesn't get boring or redundant, because I know there's been a lot of documentaries, a lot of coverage on this. So we're just going to try to keep it as brief as possible because it's a lot of information.
Tons of information. Yeah. Oh, what a tangled web we weave.
That'll be very important. Do we want to tell them what prompted us to do this episode?
Yeah.
Briefly.
Tell them.
Okay. So we actually attended a status conference on January the 16th. And we got to see old Alec, as he's lovingly referred to, in person, in the flesh, along with the prosecutor, the Attorney General of South Carolina, his lawyers, Dick Harpootlian, who's also a state senator, and all of these reporters and press and other lawyers who are involved that have been in the documentary. So it was a very surreal experience. So we decided that we'd do an episode to cover it.
Yes. And we will get more into the details of that at the end, bringing you around to present day.
So Alec Murdaugh is a prominent attorney in the Hampton County, South Carolina area.
The Low Country.
The Low Country, as it is so lovingly referred to. And so he has a law firm. It was formerly called PMPED. It was a very successful law firm, the M standing for Murdaugh in its name. And so he is a lawyer. His dad was a lawyer. His granddad was a lawyer. And his great-granddad was a lawyer in South Carolina. They served as solicitor, which is another term for a prosecutor or a district attorney in the state of South Carolina. That's what they call them. And so this has been a very prominent family. And everybody knows who they are in this area. And they know who everyone is in the Hampton, South Carolina area. So very wealthy, well-to-do family. And so everybody just thought peaches and cream, perfect family. He had a wife, her name was Margaret or Maggie. And then he had two sons, Buster, who was the oldest, and then the youngest, which was Paul. So getting into that, Paul, in February of 2019, Paul and his friends, so we have Miley and her boyfriend Connor, and then we have Mallory Beach and her boyfriend Anthony, and then we have Paul and his girlfriend Morgan. So all six of them, they decide to go to an oyster roast on an island, and they take a boat to the island to go have this oyster roast. They had stopped at Parker's on the way there, gotten some alcohol using Buster's ID. And on the surveillance camera in Parker's, you can see when he actually gets the beer, he like raises it above his head, like in celebration that he actually got the beer. So they go to this oyster roast and they're ready to go home, but they decided to stop in Beaufort, right? It was in
Yep.
Beaufort. Okay.
Mhm.
So they decided to stop in Beaufort to get another drink, and it was just Connor and Paul who went in and they had two shots. In the security video of him walking back, he is so obviously very drunk and stumbling to get back onto the boat.
He, I think we should add that he turns into Timmy, according to his
Yeah.
friends when he drinks.
Yeah, so when and Paul has had a very not so secret drinking problem. He's had some run-ins already, but they've all been kind of wiped away by his dad. Um but his friends call him Timmy when he gets drunk. This is his alter ego. He kind of just changes and he involuntarily has his hands like this. Um and
For
if
those of
you're on
you
the
not
audio
watching.
version, they're all spread out. His fingers are all spread out and he can't help that.
And just anger, just so angry, just a very angry person.
Yeah, very angry. So anyway, they get on this boat and Paul is like doing donuts. He's driving the boat erratically, and the other guys are offering to drive, and he was like, "No, this is my fucking boat. Nobody's gonna drive this." And eventually they do crash into a piling on Archer's Creek. Then Mallory, she goes flying out of the boat, and so does Anthony. Anthony makes it to shore and they can't find Mallory. I know Connor has a injury to his jaw. Um, was it Miley
Morgan.
who had the finger, or was it Morgan?
Morgan.
Morgan.
Mhm.
She had a really bad laceration to her hand. But they couldn't find Mallory, and Anthony was going in and out of the water to try to locate her. So they're all rushed to the hospital except for Anthony. Anthony refused to go because he still wanted to locate Mallory. And this turned into a almost week-long search for Mallory. And unfortunately, she was found dead in the river a couple miles away from where the crash site was. Meanwhile, back at the hospital the night of this crash happening, Paul, he was not tested at the scene. His BAC wasn't tested at the scene. And I believe he had a 0.23 at the hospital. I don't have the exact number on that, but I believe it was like almost 3 times the legal limit 2 hours after the crash. So it's already gone down. They didn't take his phone for evidence. They didn't take anything for evidence. He was at the hospital. He was naked for some reason. He was being very belligerent to the nurses and everything like that. Um, Connor goes into surgery, or is getting ready to go into surgery, and so is Morgan. And so when when Alec and Maggie get word that there has been a wreck, Alec calls his dad, Randolph Sr., and they go to the hospital. And I should mention that Alex was a volunteer solicitor at one point in time for Hampton County, but he was no longer a solicitor. He had a badge, um, and he still had that in his possession, even though he was no longer a solicitor. So he used that to kind of worm his way into the hospital. He tried to figure out who was driving the boat, and everybody is like, I'm pretty sure Paul was driving the boat. And so they, tried to intimidate everybody into saying that Connor was driving the boat. Just so, Paul wouldn't get into more trouble. Um, so just him and his dad going over there and intimidating all the kids that were there. But they let Paul go. No charges, no anything. And it wasn't until April of 2019. So about 2 months without being charged or anything, but he is eventually charged with 3 felonies in connection to the boat crash. He pled not guilty, but the boy did not even get processed in the
Mm-mm.
jail. He didn't. His mugshot was taken in the hallway of the courthouse on an iPhone, and
Which is
he
insane to me.
right, right,
Imagine the privilege.
exactly. So he didn't have to get processed in jail. He was just able to wait. And um, there's cases going on, boat cases going on, and Alec is trying to work on this as well.
Mhm.
But Paul's lawyers were the lawyers who represented Alec in his murder trial. So that was Jim Griffin and Dick Harpootlian.
Mhm.
We should mention that while this boat case is going on, Mallory's parents are suing for wrongful death, and I think they were suing for like 40 million or 50 million dollars
Something.
initially.
Mhm.
So it was big, and there was a motion that they were asking for financial records of Alec. And this is a problem for Alec because he unfortunately in his law firm where he mostly does personal injuries or death, dismemberment, things like that, that's what he deals with. So he works to get settlements for his clients who were disabled or killed. And he was embezzling money. He was taking money from those clients and their settlements. And so the numbers obviously would not add up. If they're looking at his financials, they're not going to add up. So this pressure is mounting for Alec because he knows that they're about to look into his financials and he doesn't have an explanation for this. And he says that he was taking all of this money for pain pills,
Mhm.
Oxycontin, Percocet, all those good things. Has been addicted to pain pills for 20 years at this point. So lots of secrets going on here.
Mhm.
A lot of secrets.
But before we know all of that, lots of things happen in between. Before all
Yes.
of that comes to light.
Before all of these things happen, there are a lot of things that happen in between. So we are gonna we'll go to this next thing and then we'll jump back to
Yeah.
2018 and 2015.
Like we said,
Okay.
a tangled web we weave.
It is. I feel like we need the just like pictures in the background with all the red string connecting it.
Oh my God.
Like,
We should make a board like that.
yeah, I feel like we need to do that because it is confusing, and I'm sorry if I'm making this confusing for anybody, but I hope you're following along.
I think so. It'll all connect in the end.
So all this pressure is mounting for Alec, and on June 7th of 2021, they have this hunting property. It's called Moselle. And that is out in Islandton, South Carolina, and Colleton County. So it's just neighboring Hampton County. And this is a 1,700-acre estate. So there are dog kennels that house dogs for hunting. They have an airstrip. They have a house. And just a lot they have another little cabin on the property as well. Um, and we actually went and saw all these things, so we'll have to talk about that later as
Mhm.
well. But anyway, so they are not really staying at this property. Alec has been staying at Moselle because it's closer to his job. But they also had a property in Edisto Beach, South Carolina. And that is where Maggie and Paul have been staying because they've been getting a lot of backlash since the boat case, and they didn't really feel comfortable being in Hampton anymore. So Alec had asked Maggie to come home. Alex's dad, Randolph Sr., he was very sick. He had been in the hospital, and they were thinking that his time was going to be running out. So she decided to come home, and Paul did too, to be able to be there for Alec, um, while his dad is in the hospital. So this evening, Paul and Maggie went to go out to the kennels to go check on the dogs, I believe. And Alex's mom has dementia, so she was at the house, and of course, dad is in the hospital, so he went to go check on her. Apparently, she had been having a bad day that day. So he went to go check in on his mom, stayed there for about 20 minutes, and then he left to return home. He said that he went to the house and nobody was there, so he drove over to the kennels, and that's where he finds Maggie and Paul shot to death. And they are laying. Paul is just outside of the feed room in the kennels, and Maggie is laying out in between the kennels and what do they have right there? Like a storage shed or something? But they're maybe about like 10 feet apart from each other. So Alec calls 911 and
An important thing to add about
yeah,
this. 911 starts recording the second you dial in.
yes.
So we have heard the recording where it's dead silent the entire time it's ringing. He does not start freaking out and panicking until the 911 operator answers. I don't know if we should throw that
That's a
in
good point.
right here, but I actually listened to it again last night. Dead
Did you?
silence, you just hear ringing, ringing, ringing. Like if your loved one dies and you're freaking out, I don't think you pause your freak out for
Yeah.
the phone to ring and then wait to resume until someone answers. Just saying, just throwing that in there.
Yeah. No, I did not notice or think about that, but that's crazy. So we did call 911. The 911 call, he seemed very distraught
Mhm.
in the call. He said my wife and child had been shot badly. So anyway, the police get out there and they realize it was him. And one of the officers says to the other, he's like, you know, the Murdaughs or the boat case. But I should mention, as soon as the police pull up, he goes, I know what this is. My son was in a boat wreck and people have been coming after him, and immediately starts this theory.
Mhm.
So they're investigating, and one of the police officers says to the other one, they're like, do you know about the Murdaughs and the boat case? And he's like, no. He's like, I'll fill you in later. So they already knew kind of what was going on. A few days after the investigation, officials released a statement saying that they are reopening an old case um, from 2015, and it was the case of Stephen Smith based on information that they found during their investigation. So Stephen Smith was 19 years old and he was openly gay, which is not too acceptable or common in Hampton County where they are. Um, and there has always been a suspicion that Buster or Paul was involved. And they had never been interviewed, even though many, many, many people told them that they heard it was the Murdaugh boys.
Mhm.
And so never had been interviewed, which obviously I'm sure that, dad or uncle who's also a lawyer or granddad who's also a lawyer probably prevented that from happening.
Right.
That case was opened, and Stephen Smith was found lying in the middle of the road, dead.
Mhm.
His car had run out of gas, and the gas door
Mhm.
tank was open. And he was actually walking in the opposite direction of the store. Um, so it seemed a little bit odd.
And his wallet was in the car.
And his wallet was in the car, and he didn't have his phone on him, did he? I don't remember that either. Um, but anyway, he was found lying in the middle of the road with a blow to his head. And not really too many other injuries, I don't believe.
Mhm.
And he still had his shoes on. He was intact. So the Department of Transportation, they usually investigate wrecks, and they're the ones who say, this doesn't look like a hit and run. It's looking like blunt force trauma."
Mhm.
But it was ruled a hit and run and had just been cold the entire time. So that's a case that is still to this day not solved. And there's just still suspicion that they had something to do with that. And what do you feel like your theories are on that?
For me, it's hard to speculate about who was involved, but I know there's no way. I think we all know there's no way that it's a hit and run because correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't even have any scrapes, like road rash from being like slid.
And he was still in his shoes.
Right,
They
that's
say
the
your
main
shoes go
thing.
flying when you get hit.
Yeah, it looked like he had been hit in the head, not by a car,
Yeah.
and fallen and died right there.
Yeah. So people have speculated that it was maybe a baseball bat.
Mm-hmm.
That Paul and Buster like to do things like that, like smash mailboxes and stuff with baseball bats while you're driving down the road, allegedly. We just say all this stuff is alleged.
Alleged. Yeah.
Alleged.
What's hard, I'm not good at theorizing things because it's hard for me to imagine, like, besides word of mouth, like all of these people are saying this powerful family has something to do with it. I mean, how do we really have a connection there besides people saying something, which could be true and it could, really be something. But for me, it's hard to say. But he was definitely attacked by someone for sure.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I don't think they were the only ones. Um, and I have my reasons for thinking that, but
Do you want to
I'm
share?
not gonna go
Oh,
I'm
you
not
don't
gonna
have
go
to.
into too much detail because I feel like this story just goes way beyond on what we can fit into an episode.
Mhm.
There's an entire podcast dedicated to this family. So there's a lot. Just if you're interested, go and do your own research on Stephen Smith. I think it's very, very interesting. Um, and right now they're saying that Buster is not a person of interest, but they do have a person of interest. So I do think the family had a hand in that. So that was in 2015. We had another incident occurring at the Moselle property in 2018, around February 26th.
So about a year before the boat crash
About a year
happened.
before the boat wreck. Yep. So this is just an example of Alex greed. Um, so they had a housekeeper for over 20 years. Her name was Gloria Satterfield. She was 57 years old, and she had essentially raised the boys since they were young. Um, and so she was headed to work that day, and she had her McDonald's breakfast. She had her purse on her shoulder. She was walking up the steps, and all of a sudden, Maggie calls 911. She said, "My housekeeper has fallen and I can't get her up." Um, and so Gloria had fallen backwards and she was bleeding from her head. And the story was that the dogs had tripped her up on the steps. um Paul eventually gets on the phone and he was, the operator was asking him some questions. Like, I think the question that set him off was, has she had a stroke before? And he was like, "Ma'am, can you stop asking so many questions?" And just getting very rude with the operator. But Alec was the one who told them the story about the dogs, and he said that she told him that. But come to find out, Gloria was actually unresponsive from the time that she fell. She didn't say anything to him. But this whole thing about the dogs was the main story up until a few months ago, where Alec finally said there were no dogs. I mean, he said, "I don't know what happened," because she was unresponsive and Alec wasn't even there.
Right. Yeah.
But he said that he was. He said that he was there and that he talked to her.
Yeah.
But he was never there. And so Alec went to Gloria's sons. She has two sons, and told them, "You need to sue me, so you can get some money and I'll take care of you. It's my insurance company, and they'll give you a payout. But you can't use me because it's conflict of interest as your lawyer. But I have this good friend, Corey Fleming, who will represent you, and he'll get you the maximum payout for my insurance or what have you." So this took a long time, and Alec continued to tell Tony, which is one of Gloria Satterfield's sons, that they're working on it, they're working on it, they're working on it. And then all of a sudden they read that they had reached a $4.3 million settlement, and they had not seen any of this money. and Alec had stolen it all from them. And meanwhile, they got evicted from their house. Like they had nothing.
It's crazy to me.
The fact that this man can lie straight to the people that he was close with
Mm-hmm.
for years
Yep.
and years. It's not just like a faceless person that he's stealing from.
And seeing them struggle, go through
Right.
all these struggles for not having any money.
Yeah.
He didn't care.
It's just like sickening. So sickening.
Mm-hmm.
We can now jump back to the time around the murder. So around September 3rd, because they had been asking Alec about money not adding up for a while. But with the murder of his wife and child, they stopped asking questions, obviously, because you don't want to be insensitive.
Right.
And so they just forgot all about that. They wanted to support their partner, which they did. And time had passed in September where he just couldn't hold them off anymore, and he did admit to stealing money. And so on September 3rd of 2021, he was forced to resign from the law firm. They changed the name to Parker Law Group. So the Murdaugh name was no longer part of that. September 4th,
So the next
the
day.
next day, Alec calls 911 saying that he had gotten a flat tire on the side of the road, Salkehatchie Road, and he stopped to change his tire and somebody stopped to help him and they shot him in the head and he was bleeding. And so come to find out, it was just a graze wound. And he was okay. He was going to survive. But his story wasn't adding up. He initially said, yeah, it was this man, fair amount younger than me, blonde hair, gave him a different type of truck, whatever, that he was driving. And eventually it comes out that it is his distant cousin and longtime drug dealer, Curtis Eddie Smith, that he had called him to shoot and kill him in the head so Buster could get his $10 million life insurance policy. Because all of his money was obviously going to be gone. SLED, which is the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, eventually figures this out. He admitted to all of this, admits that he has an opioid addiction, admits to stealing from his law partners. Everything is starting to kind of come crashing down at this point. So he on September 15th, SLED announced an investigation into Gloria Satterfield's death. Which is why we needed to backtrack a little bit. And the following day, September 16th, Alec was arrested for fraud and the conspiracy to stage his suicide. And his lawyers are saying that he's, depressed by the loss of his family and it exacerbated his drug use. And he was just in a really bad spot. So that's why he wanted to end his life. There are some theories as to why he called Curtis Eddie Smith. I think he wanted the public to believe that somebody was after him also.
Whoever killed Paul and Maggie
Exactly.
came after him.
And then I'm thinking that Alec may have wanted to shoot him and say that it was self-defense. So then,
Ooh.
Curtis Eddie Smith would be dead.
Yeah.
And then you could pin that on him.
Yeah. Wow. I haven't heard that perspective.
Yeah.
Ooh. There's like, no matter how long this has been happening, I feel like there's always layers getting pulled back, different theories and stuff. So
for sure.
It stays interesting for sure.
Then on October 14th, 2021,
My birthday.
he was your birthday. He was arrested at a Florida detox center and charged with swindling millions of dollars from the sons of Miss Satterfield. And so finally getting their justice on that. Then in June 28th, 2022, he was indicted on narcotics counts along with Curtis Eddie Smith, his cousin. And then in July of 2022, this is when he is finally indicted for the murders of Maggie and Paul.
Over a year after they happened.
Over a year after they happened, you're correct. He pled not guilty.
Of course.
Of course he did. And then in January 23rd of 2023 is when the trial began. The trial lasted 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And Alec did decide to take the stand. If you have not seen that, I highly suggest that you watch it. It is a narcissist at work.
I must say, if you don't want to sit through the thick of all the trial, the documentary on Fox Nation, I believe, the one where Buster gets interviewed as well. To me, that is the most like concise timeline of the trial. Like, here's this evidence that happened. Here's this one. Like, I really love the way
You like the flow of that one?
yeah, the way they explain the whole trial. So if you don't know about the trial and you want like the key points of it, Fox Nation.
Yeah. Which I watched the whole trial, gavel to gavel. I was obsessed. It was just me posting up at work every day and just having YouTube playing so I can make sure that I'm getting in on it.
Yeah.
Oh no, it was March 2nd. He was found guilty of murdering his wife and son. The next day he was sentenced to life in prison. And he had been there up until recently. I mean, he's still been there, obviously. He filed an appeal within 10 days. But we had some other things come up. I will say Gloria is only an example of what has happened, but he was charged with 99 crimes. 99. He has taken money from so many families. And I want to say it was in the ballpark of 10 million.
Something crazy.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a
And
lot. I don't have an exact number.
to reiterate, it's people he knows. It's not all just strangers. Like some of these people he grew up with, or like I believe he said his parents grew up with some of their parents. Like,
Yeah.
it's a small town and everyone knows everyone, and he's looking these people in the face and taking from them.
Yep. So, he did get indicted for all those crimes, which he pled guilty for. And this just happened a few weeks ago, the sentencing hearing and the victim impact statements and all of that stuff. But he was sentenced to 27 years for that. Meanwhile, in the murder trial, the clerk of court, Becky Hill, which I've already mentioned on this podcast.
Yep.
She is the one who wrote a book. It's called Behind the Doors of Justice. She plagiarized a foreword of it. And she was accused of jury tampering. So the status conference that we attended was hearing what evidence would be admitted into the evidentiary hearing that is supposed to happen in 2 weeks. Well, actually a week now.
Yeah.
So we went to that. They did say that they weren't going to allow motive or anything like that. Which I guess now that's getting into our
Yeah.
our thing, our experience.
I think first off, for comedic purposes, we should add that we went to the wrong courthouse.
Oh my God.
Upon arriving to Columbia, we went to Supreme Court, which was very big and very fancy. And we walked in and very empty. So we were like, why is no one here for the status hearing? Like, we thought there would be at least some people. And we walked in and it was just such a gorgeous building, and the man was very confused about why we were there. He was, and I'm just, full suits. Just Supreme Court is the fanciest of the fancy. But luckily we had gotten there early, so we did get pointed in the right direction, made it to the correct courthouse. For those of you that have ever watched Live PD, saw some cops that I recognized from Live PD, so that was fun. So while we were waiting for the hearing to start, this man was sitting in front of us, and he stands up holding these papers, a stack of papers. And what does he say when he stands up?
He was like, I'm sure this is the reason that all of them just went back there just now. And I'm gonna leave this here for everybody to read.
Yep. And then so he places it in front of the press, which they're off to like the right and we're over on the left. And they're all reading this paper and they look like they found something interesting. Come to find out during the break, it was this document essentially saying the judge was involved in like an infringement of civil rights, I think it said.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, it was an infringement on that man's civil rights.
Yes, the specific man that stood up.
Which now, when I realized it was him, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's not like, you know.
Right.
But then I saw that it was a grand jury investigation. So maybe there is something there. I really don't know.
Yeah, we're gonna look into that document more and figure out what's going on there. But I just imagine that man goes to anything that this judge is involved in and does the same thing, stands up and tries to give that information to as many people as he can. He wasn't actually there with any Murdaugh information or intent for that matter, I guess. So let's just go through what happens. So Alec walks out, he trips down the stairs, almost falls, does not fall. Looking at him, I don't want to say face to face because he was not looking at us, but seeing his face full on was chilling. We've talked about this before, but he has essentially no eyebrows, but a very prominent brow bone, and his eyes are very, very dark. There appears to be nothing behind them. So just imagine the dark eyes plus the brow bone coming up. It's chilling. It really
Yeah.
is. And there's just like this,
He's a scary dude.
yeah. I guess not an aura. There's this
Yeah.
an energy that comes with him. And the entire room just fell silent when he walked in. And that was a little eerie as well.
Yeah, that was. And you're
Mhm.
just like, do I want to continue talking and pretend that he's not even here?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, and the fact that, which, I mean, we have the benefit of hindsight, you know,
Mhm.
but just the fact that people trusted him,
Yeah.
I'm just like, how?
Oh my God, when he was greeting Dick,
So how you doing, buddy?
I've never felt so unsettled in my life. It's the way he smiled, the way he was just intensely looking at him, the handshake, and like this is someone he obviously knows very well. And just seeing that interaction, there was something like so like honestly, it felt malicious to me. And that could, again, that could just be hindsight, like this man did all these crimes, but I feel like if I was approached by him not knowing anything, I would be a little scared, like I wouldn't
Yeah,
be willing to trust him and like interact with him on any like deeper level. I don't know. I don't know if that's even relevant. I just thought I would throw that in there.
right. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess we should talk about what went on
Yeah.
there.
I don't know what went on the first half because I was falling asleep accidentally.
And I was freezing. And I looked pissed off. We both kind of looked pissed off.
Yeah.
But we were on court TV.
Woo. Check us out on YouTube.
Yep. Um, so essentially what the judge ruled on was that because the defense was saying her motive for tampering with the jury was to sell books, which obviously I totally believe.
Yep.
I believe that she probably did tamper with the jury.
100% I think she did.
But anyway, so they're not ruling on that. Well, they ruled on that and that it's not going to be admitted. And they are excluding anything that is not specific to the actual day where the jury was deliberating. And they aren't taking testimony from alternates or the juror that was dismissed, the egg lady juror. Because when she got dismissed, she was like, "Do you have anything back there?" She goes, "Yes." And he said, "What is it?" She goes, "A dozen eggs." Like, why do you have a dozen eggs?
I don't know. Not in court.
Not in court. Were they? I want to know if they were hard boiled or
They
if it was
had
just
to
like a
be.
thing of dozen eggs.
That had to be boiled. You're not bringing like raw eggs into court, right?
I don't know.
You would hope not.
But anyway, so I feel like this was a very big loss for the defense. As soon as we walked out there, I was like, he's not getting a new trial.
Right. Which, I mean, All things aside, did he do it or did he not? I think he 100% deserves a new trial.
I
Because
think he deserves one too, so he can be found guilty again. He would be. He would be found guilty again. I know he would.
yeah, I mean, besides her influence, it's not like anything within the trial would change, like
Right.
the evidence and the facts about it. So,
Yep.
and it's so high profile these days. I know they have a process to picking the jury, but I can't imagine it hasn't reached, especially South Carolina
Oh
people.
yeah.
And regardless of what they're going to say, they already have an opinion. They already have a bias about
Oh
it.
yeah. For sure.
That's just how it is.
Yep.
Which that could go into a whole other justice system issue. So I'm not even gonna get into that. Um, you kind of fangirled a little bit seeing, I think you did mention this in
Creighton
the beginning.
Waters.
Yeah. Because we've seen these people on TV for years now, almost. And
Yeah.
then they were just there in person, which granted it's like a very serious situation, but it was just interesting to see that. Um,
I love Creighton Waters. He's the main prosecutor on the case.
he is
He
precious.
is a little precious with his little button nose.
Um, something that shocked me, I think it shocked you as well, is that we saw Stephen Smith's mom there. Um, and I think we were just kind of wondering what was her motivation for being there. Like, I understand if it had anything to do with Stephen Smith, but like you said, it was simply just to kind of see what they had to put in the evidentiary hearing against Becky Hill. So I'm very curious what was her motivation for driving to Columbia and attending this.
I still think she thinks that the Murdaugh boys did it. That's the only reason she would be there.
Mm-hmm. But what is, like, I'm wondering, what does she think she's doing by being there? I'm not saying she doesn't have a right to be there, but if she thinks that they did it, what does her attending stuff like this do?
Maybe just to show her face. Look
Just
at what we're thinking
put
about right
put
now.
the pressure? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Buster was not there.
I know you were disappointed.
I'm honestly so upset that Buster wasn't there. I was looking forward to seeing my twin.
I knew he wasn't going to be there.
Ah, holding out for the evidentiary hearing. Don't put negative vibes out there. He's gonna be there.
So, are we going to go to the evidentiary hearing? Maybe.
Hopefully, I hope so.
Maybe one day. One day out of the three.
Yeah. I kind of hate, like, I know once I get there, I'm like low-key narcoleptic or something. Because if I'm sitting silently, especially when I'm not allowed to talk and it's like a cold room and it's there's mood lighting in that courtroom, I'm telling you. I'm gonna start falling asleep. I can't help it. It's just, it's in my blood. So I know that I would like probably be struggling. Maybe I'll take a 5 hour energy. I don't know. But every part of me just wants to be there every single day. But I know that that's going to be like a very long, grueling process. I know you have to work, unfortunately. If you didn't, I would get a hotel room so fast.
Yeah. Legit.
So yeah, we're gonna try to go to at least one day of the evidentiary hearing. I don't know. I guess I would like to say my opinion on everything. The more that I see and research and hear, the more confused I am. Do I think Alec is innocent? No. However, I am unsure. There's lots of theories out there. There was two shooters, like the one that shot Paul had to be shorter because of the angle that it came up through like his
Yeah.
shoulder. There's so many theories out there, and I say this all the time. I have such an issue with knowing that we will never know the truth because one, we've both decided that Alec and that entire family, to be honest, is too narcissistic and has too much pride to ever admit that they've done something,
Yep.
even if he did it. So like, yeah, the financial crimes he admitted to, there's no denying that. But with something like the murder, even if he did do it, he would never admit to it. Um, I also saw another theory that was saying like Alec didn't shoot them, but they made him, whoever did it made him watch to pay for like whether it be drug money or the money he took from the family, whatever. I
Yeah.
see all of these different theories and it kills me inside. Maybe that's why I'm so obsessed with it, because it kills me inside to know that we will never know.
Yeah.
Absolutely never know the truth. And leading up to doing this episode today, it induced nightmares for me last night of getting hunted down by a shooter. Also, I don't know if this is going to make it in or if this is relevant, but it was very confusing to me when the judge was introducing the case at the status hearing that we went to, and she called Paul Bennett Murdaugh. When
Paul Terry.
we've never seen Bennett anywhere in regards to this family. It's Paul Terry. His grave says Paul Terry. I'm confused about how that made it into the document, or did she just misread? How do
She's
you misread
confused.
that? That was the first thing that I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But I also, because we have visited the gravesite a few times, I don't love the fact that they don't have headstones.
Still.
Still.
It's been coming up on 3 years.
Yeah. So I mean, at this point, I don't think they're going to get any. They have like the little plaques with their name on it.
Yeah.
I don't understand that either.
Crazy.
I don't know.
Somebody needs to do that for them.
Yes. If I had the money, I would do it. I feel like they're very expensive, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Leading up to going to this evidentiary hearing, we watched this Lifetime movie. Um, Lifetime made a movie about the whole situation. It's like a two-parter, and it was so astronomically horrible. The casting was bad. The facts were not facts at all. They literally made up their own entire story, pretty much,
They did.
for this movie. We didn't even finish it. We didn't finish part 2. I don't think that we will. But yeah. I was just
It was rough.
appalled at the amount of things that they got wrong when it's so easy to just pull up an article, turn on a documentary, and at least get the facts right.
They gave Alec a side chick.
They gave him a side chick. Maggie was at the hospital after the boat wreck in the movie, but not in real life. Miley was not a character at all when she was very much there during the boat crash.
Buster didn't make it into the movie, period.
Buster, they couldn't find another ginger to play Buster, I guess. They made up this entire scenario where Alec like grabbed Paul by the collar and was like intimidating him and being somewhat abusive, and I'm just like, where do you get that from?
Yeah.
Like, how can you in good conscience like make a movie like that?
And people are gonna take that as fact.
Yeah, especially the older ladies that post up on Lifetime all day. They're gonna think that
Yeah.
they have a completely different story of it. I did a post about asking for like opinions. Anyone who has been following the case, I got a couple responses. So someone asked if he spoke in the courtroom and did he sound remorseful. He did not speak in this status hearing that we went to. There are other instances where he spoke, obviously, during his trial and the victim statement.
His statement for the financial crimes was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I recommend searching that up and looking for it as well.
It's a good 45 minutes, though, so be prepared.
He starts off being very apologetic to the victims, and then it somehow turns into a very long apology to Buster about everything, even though he is not a victim of Alec's financial crimes. And at one part, he reiterates that him and Maggie raised their sons.
But Gloria
But
helped.
Gloria did help. And it was just, it was very bizarre. So no, he did not speak when we were there, but there's plenty of him speaking on the internet, and I do recommend looking that up. What was the courtroom vibe like? Well, like we said, when he walked in, it fell completely silent. My opinion during the entire hearing had an overall clown vibe, in the sense that Dick and Creighton kept going back and forth, and the judge kept being like, we can't keep going back and forth, just like say what you need to say. Dick went on, and he kept saying the same things over and over, to the point that the judge kind of got sassy
I
with
hope this is the
him.
last time you bring this up.
That's what the judge said to him. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously it's a very serious topic, and it was a professional courtroom setting, but to me there was a sense of clownery behind all of it, honestly. And someone shared their opinion saying that they watched the whole thing. They think he's guilty. He killed all the innocents and played crazy. Seems to be the general consensus.
What are you laughing at?
I couldn't say that word. The general consensus.
Yeah.
I choked on my retainers. Consensus. But yeah, that seems to be like general opinion. Is most people think he's guilty. Buster, by the way, maintains his innocence in the Stephen Smith situation, says that there's no intimate relation that ever happened there.
Which we didn't bring that up, but it was inferred.
Yeah, with Buster being I guess
Closeted.
accused by the public for being involved with the Stephen Smith case, it was because they allegedly were having intimate relations, and obviously that's totally not acceptable for Buster. That's a whole thing in itself. But he also maintains his dad is innocent. There's a lot of mixed feelings about all of this that I have. And we could probably go on for days about this.
Yep.
So I think maybe we'll stop for now.
Unless anybody wants a deeper dive. If you do, if you've enjoyed this content, you let us know.
Absolutely down to dive deeper. And we might, a couple weeks from now, maybe after the evidentiary hearing, go deeper into it and make another part to this. But for anyone that's listening, if you've already like known something about the case, or if you're just learning about it now from us, I want input. I want everyone's opinions. Please tell us what you think. You can comment on the video, DM us, do whatever you need to do. But I'm very, very curious to see. So yeah. Song of the week this week is The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia by Reba. I feel like it's fitting for this episode because there's a line in there that says, "Don't trust your soul to no backwoods Southern lawyer."
Oh.
So yeah, had to throw that in for this week.
Okay. I guess my PSA would be don't trust a word that Alec Murdaugh says.
I think that's a good PSA.
Yeah.
Regardless of if he did it or not, he is a liar.
He is a liar, straight up.
Yep.
Yep. You've been listening to the Straight Crooked Podcast.
Bye.
Bye.